you want to take people with you instead of driving them ahead of you, or pulling them. You want to take them with you instead of dragging them behind you.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and today I have Sean Kennedy from Kennedy Painting in St. Louis. So, Sean, thank you so much for coming on today.
No, thanks for asking me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Tell me the 2 to 3 minute bio on who Sean Kennedy is and what you're up to these days.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So I got into painting. I didn't do very good in high school. Actually, barely got out of high school. I was the guy smoking cigarettes behind the gym, not paying attention. Kind of fell into painting like a lot of us do. Worked for a couple hack outfits over the years, and but one of them was a company that was really great and actually showed like the idea of what a business could look like. I grew up outside of Chicago and then moved to St. Louis after meeting my wife. And when I came down here, I worked for another one of those hack outfits. And until that ended up working its way out and started basically a truck and a brush. Actually, it was a '84 Buick LeSabre Limited and a brush was the origin of Kennedy Painting. Did a job for my my landlord after leaving that other position. That turned into a couple jobs for him, which turned into a friend of a friend, and then that's where it started. So up to now, where I've upgraded from a Buick to a full-size pickup truck. We have 50 employees now in the company, and are doing pretty well. Been in business 25 years. So truck and a brush to 50 employees and a truck now. So
that's awesome. I just had to look this up. So this is the I don't know which color your car was. The blue.
Buick. It was nicknamed the Plomp because it looked like it was all monkey poop brown. So, but that's it. That's her right there. Yeah.
Brown. Let's see.
No reverse. It had you had to be creative.
Like this guy or
that's the Plomp right there. Yeah,
right here.
That's her. Had better wheels.
There you go.
That's it. Imagine that going down the road with a 40-foot ladder strapped to the top. That just has professionalism. So
did you put a little decal sticker or magnet on the side?
No, it didn't last long. Like I said, when I had it, it didn't have any reverse, so it was a short-lived. Yeah. It was a short-lived vehicle once I had to start working. So I love that. For myself. So yeah.
So how you start this business, and then now you guys have been in business for how many years did you say?
25 years legitimately. So
25 years legitimately.
As far as the government knows. So
yeah.
Yes.
So so what was the over time? These are things that when I think of Sean Kennedy that I think of, but you're constantly of all the painting business owners that I talk to, you are one of the people that is more interested in just let's get a little bit better. And I don't know if this is something that you would relate to, but I remember in high school, I had a coach that was just adamant on, we just need to get 1% better every day. Let's look for just a tiny, what can we do better? And that could be, we're going to eat healthier. We're going to get a little more sleep. We're going to, do that extra rep in the gym. But whatever it was, he was always let's just chip away, do a little bit more. And then that 1% every day is going to add up, and we're going to be significantly better than the people that are coasting or taking it easy. Does that did you have a time in your life where you adopted this mentality or mindset, or where does that desire for constant improvement come from?
That's a good question. I think as I've gotten older, I've been more open to the idea of incremental changes versus when I was younger. You go down and you want to attack the buffet. You want everything off the buffet. Versus as you get older, you kind of realize that small change over a long period of time is much more. It's better. It's easier on everybody. It also is more likely to stick versus trying to change a whole bunch of things at once. I don't know. I've always been, I've heard this drive that I have in myself of just little improvement or improving things. It's been phrased as not always a positive, to be honest. There's a lot of, I don't really stop to celebrate successes. I'm on to the next thing. I think which can burn people out. I think I've been in the past accused of being a pessimist, because of I tend to be a gap person. Like if we hit 95%, I wonder how we could, what happened to the other five, instead of celebrating the 95, instead of celebrating the A, I look at, we just got an A instead of an A plus. So it's not a great characteristic trait of myself in a lot of instances. It drives my wife crazy. I'm surprised she's still with me. But it's gotten better. I think I've made it more as I've gotten older. I've just turned 50, so as I've gotten older, I've learned to dial it back a little bit to something that's more manageable and really more meaningful. It's a lot easier to stick at that 1% every month than it is to try to get, you know big changes quick.
So that's making me think, like, I can relate to what you're saying about when, tell me, I could be totally projecting, but for me, if I'm the business owner and we set a goal of 100,000 of whatever in whatever time frame that is, but that's the goal, we hit 95,000. The fear that immediately comes up inside of me is that if I celebrate the 95,000, then I've just discredited the goal. And then next time we have a goal, then the company knows that Chris is still going to celebrate it if we get close. Does that resonate with you, or is that just me? That's where my mind goes?
Yeah, so yeah, there's definitely truth to that. Like you don't want to celebrate. Okay, you don't want to just keep moving the goalposts closer and closer, so you're hitting goals. Right? I think it diminishes the goal, but I think it is also good to look at that. If you come up short a lot, we as owners sometimes set maybe too high goals. Maybe we are unreasonable in some of that. So, but there is truth to that. You don't Good may be good, but it's not great. I don't know if that makes sense or not. And there sometimes, a lot of times, there's celebrating. Good is worth celebrating. Great is really worth celebrating, and making sure you're not rolling out the red carpet for an average month when you really had something set higher to drive toward. But you got to make sure that you're looking at the successes. You're working with people's strengths, people's successes.
Well, because I'm thinking that I feel like, and this is maybe something that I read in a book, but or this thought, I don't know where it came from, but it's like, for myself, if I have a goal of hitting something personally and it's just an internal goal, maybe I wrote it down on a piece of paper or told my wife, but when I don't hit it, I'm more likely to give grace to myself and be like, oh, there were circumstances, whatever. But it's like it's that transition from how I manage or coach myself versus others. And the fear is that if I give the same, grace to others, then they are not going to have the same drive or whatever that I have. I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but that's like, I know that the right thing to do is to treat others in that same way and just trust that high performers or the people on my team are going to want to, everybody wants to win. So why should I be ruthless in that, like, expectation? But I don't know, I kind of feel like for myself, I like having coaches that are like, you could have done better. And it's like, yep, you're right.
Yeah, certain people do better with being challenged. And it's funny, I'm less likely to give grace on myself than I am on my people. And again, that's something that's changed over the years too. I used to just be hard on everybody, myself even twice as much. Um, but I really try to. I think one of the things that is, you look at the big numbers in business, you look at your big KPIs, and if you're hitting the big numbers, there's always something that's going to be off. There's always something that's going to be screwed up. There's going to be something you're coming up short on. But try to set the stage for people to win at what they're good at. I think that in the past, I really tried to work on, or my perceived deficiencies of the people I'd worked around, tried to work with them on getting better at what they're not great at, instead of really embracing what they are good at and leveraging that. And I think that's been a fundamental change in my company, in my happiness, my personal happiness too. Instead of looking, like I said earlier, as a gap person, I look for that shortcoming. Instead of looking for the shortcoming in the person, you look for the strengths of the person and try to work with that. And I think that changes things and sets people up. And that doesn't mean you don't hold them accountable. It doesn't mean you don't still strive for hard goals, but you frame it in a way that you're working toward their strengths equal the success of wherever you're going.
Yeah, that reminds me of the book James Clear, Atomic Habits. Have you read that book?
No.
So he has a quote in there that is, "You do not rise to the level of your goals; you fall to the level of your systems." And the this conversation is just making me think the correct way to do it is obviously if you hit the goal or not. And I don't know if you agree with this, but I would say as I'm working through this opinion myself right now in real time, instead of celebrating the goal, you should be celebrating the systems that you have in place that are designed to hit the goal, right? But if you did all the things if you hit all the KPIs and you still miss the goal, that's when we're going to celebrate that you were 95% of the way there because the systems were in place. But then conversely, if you hit the goal, but you were giving 40% or 50% to the KPIs, is that something to celebrate? I don't know. It's just like trying to optimize the system to give the result that you want.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So like this year, we are down on revenue. We set a goal of 5 million this year, and we're breaking 5 million, and we're going to be short of that. But our profit is great, so I'm willing to sacrifice. I would rather have the profit. I'd rather be over on profit and under on revenue than over on revenue and lower on profit. So to your point there, so even though we're not hitting all of our goals, the systems and the progress we've made this year is definitely worth celebrating to those people. So we're not hitting all of them. I'm not going to be hardline about that. It's a lot easier to say that when profit is the number you're hitting and not revenue, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
true.
it's a lot easier to say that when you have money in the bank versus not. So
How do you, well, I guess I have other questions that could be going deeper in a direction that my mind's going, but what other topics on this, what other thoughts, questions, comments do you have on this idea of like leading a company towards constant improvement in general?
yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think you want to take people with you instead of driving them ahead of you, or pulling them. You want to take them with you instead of dragging them behind you. And I think that's there was a book. I think it even had that title or something like "Taking People with You" or something like that I read years ago. But it really is that not everybody is going to be as driven as the next guy or as able to do as the next person. But you need a team to succeed. And if you're just constantly whipping the mule to get that extra step out of them, it sometimes you get it turns on you. It can turn on you really quick, where you start losing culture and all the stuff that you work for. The goal at the end of the day is these KPIs that we look at in business is they really are they're related to like people and a team that has to help you get there. And if you forget that and just focus on the number, you have ability to sabotage yourself and either driving people too hard. For years, I asked of people things that they couldn't give me. They just weren't good at that thing that I needed them to do in their role. And we've parted ways, and unfortunately, in some of the instances, we parted ways not as friends, which is never good when emotions take over in business. Um, but yeah, making sure that breaking you're not breaking the car trying to get up the hill.
Do you have any suggestions or tips or things that you've learned in managing people that you would give to an owner that's like beating their head against the wall because their people are not hitting the goals, and it's like it's like diving into that question of maybe you're not, maybe the goal that you're giving the person isn't suited for that person's skill set or their personality or whatever. But what like tactical things, and I'm thinking in my mind, I'm thinking like disc profiles, levels of leadership. I don't know, the whatever stuff you're drawn to, but that kind of that sphere is where I think is interesting, and I'm not an expert in it.
Yeah, I think first, if we're not hitting, someone's not hitting goals, you internalize, you look, are the goals correct? Are they, are they make sure they're not overly ambitious or burdensome? And then looking at, the person's uh, habits that go into the behaviors and going into reaching those. And then finally, if it's something that went long term. So I had one of the guys that helped me start the company. Really, he and I worked together and would hire people, and he progressed into a position as a field supervisor or as a foreman. Um, he was a great painter, really great guy, but did not did not like conflict. I mean, he actively avoided conflict. So, and a lot of times as small businesses, we promote people up into positions that they just fundamentally don't have in them, right? Because that's what you need at the time. Um, and that was one of the situations that it got to a point where he was stressed out completely because he was being asked to have all these confrontations of quality and discipline with the painters that reported to him, and he was getting run over, and I was getting more frustrated. And we realized, just, hey man, it's just, it's not in you. It's okay. It's but if you don't want to paint and you don't want to manage painters, then probably working at a painting company isn't a good fit for you. So we had to part ways. But I think that's one of those scenarios, is that for different roles, there's different personality types and behavior types that you need for those roles. You don't want a bookkeeper that's really not good with details and super gregarious, the life of the party. You don't want a field supervisor that is afraid of having conflict and having hard discussions with people. Same thing with salespeople. You don't want a salesperson that isn't driven to hit goals. Um, and the quicker you can identify, I think people really are who they are, and you can work with them. And this goes back to like saying, instead of working with people's deficiencies, you can improve them slightly, and you can give them tools and scripts and procedures and systems to better some of them. But in a lot of cases, the systems and processes we're putting in place are us just trying to prevent failure. They're not fostering success. So working with people's strength allows them to really expand what they're good at and do that. But again, there's a lot of people that are just wrong for they're the right people for the wrong role. And you got to find a different seat for them in the company, or you just part ways. And everybody's typically happier and less stressful when you come to have those conversations.
So I'm thinking you've grown this business to now you guys are at, is it 4 million, or no, you said 5 million was the goal, you're going to
Five
be
was
just
the
shy
goal.
of
We're just
five.
yep,
Yeah.
just shy.
So you've been in business for 25 years. It's making me think of the statistic of like, 90% of businesses fail. And I think it's something like, even after that's in the first year, but then, or no, I think it's within the first 5 years or something, there's a huge, huge percentage of businesses that don't make it. So there's two parts of this question. One is, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term zone of genius, or like your unique ability. Dan Sullivan calls it your unique ability. And everybody, once you find your unique ability, the more you can do that thing, whatever it is, and then delegate or outsource everything else, the better off you're going to be. And the more fun you're going to have, the more money you're going to make, because that's where you are uniquely designed or set up to provide the most value, which is going to in turn bring in the most, value, revenue back to you. But I don't know if you've ever heard that term before, but I would say, in reflecting on 25 years, what would you say is Sean Kennedy's unique ability that enabled him to run this business from 0 to 20 or to 5 million in 25 years?
Yeah, and of all the growth, I think in 2009, 2008 or something like that, we were doing a half a million So the most of the growth, so the first whatever it was, 10 years was just everything went through me. Um, I think my unique ability has become that I'm pretty good at putting teams together. I'm pretty good at at fostering discussions between people and you know and putting teams together. I think when I got out of my own way and let people that are better and smarter than me do do their job, things have gotten a lot better. Even that it took a long time for me to let go, and especially as a small business owner, Kennedy Painting, you wrap yourself up in your identity. That's why I named it Kennedy Painting, right? It's not. I always say that's the worst thing I ever did was name it Kennedy Painting because it's not about me anymore. It's about, I'm just an employee of the company. If I get hit by the bus tomorrow, my accounting manager can sign my name better than I can for the payroll. So, it's really my ability to find people, to put them in positions of success, and then get them to work with each other constructively. I think has been the most rewarding thing for me, and I think the thing that I'm decent at anyway. I wouldn't say good. I'm decent.
Have you heard that term before? Unique ability or zone of genius?
Uh, Something around that, not exactly that phrase, but yeah, and I think it goes to allowing people to do what they're really good at and getting out of their way, and then maybe even putting a team that you put a couple of people together that I think a good team is diverse, right? You have the auditor on the team, you have the enthusiastic person on the team, you have the you know the the person that really likes just that can break it down into little pieces to get things implemented. If it's all one person, you're only getting, and this is where we're at, like again, the zone of genius. A lot of times when we start our own business, it is us. We are. It's
You'll
like
do
when you go
everything.
yeah, you're everything. And it's like when I've been reaching out to smaller companies. We're trying to hire on painters and staff to grow because right now we're limited. We're limited in our market by my ability to get more people and more leaders and more painters. And so we've been reaching out to smaller companies, competitors, to possibly buy them up. But when you talk to somebody, you know, Joe Blow's painting is really just Joe Blow. I mean, there's nothing there except for a bunch of broken ladders and Joe. And if he doesn't come with the company, then there's really nothing to buy, or there's nothing to really work with.
I've heard this said once that every entrepreneur, in order to grow as a business or as a person, well, first of all, in order for the business to grow, it's only going to grow as much as the leader is able or willing to grow. And so this is something that fascinates me, but I love having people, entrepreneurs, talk about the ceilings that they had to break through mentally or the limiting beliefs that you may have had that were holding you back from continuing to grow. And it could be something as simple as like not believing in yourself. Well, I guess that's simple on one hand, but it's also really massive if you don't believe in yourself. But does that resonate with you? Do you have any limiting beliefs that you feel like were, um, if you could have gone back 25 years ago and told Sean Kennedy, hey, you know this, that would have made this journey much more efficient or less painful or whatever?
Uh, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first big lessons that you learn is that if you want to scale something, you know you got to get out of the way. A lot of times, for years I limited what our company was able to do because I had to be involved in everything. The head trash around, well, it says Kennedy Painting, so only I'm the best salesperson in the company, or it says Kennedy Painting, so the customer needs to see me on the job site. That's like the first big lesson that I took away is that you need to get out of the way yourself sometimes to let the company grow.
What
And
prevents someone from getting out of the way?
control. I mean, you typically don't go into business for yourself because you're easy to get along with. A lot of times as owners, we have control issues. I mean, I'm sure in your business, I'm sure there's certain aspects of what you do that you have certain things that you feel like you have to keep your hand on, or it just doesn't get done right. So
Right. And then but then the solution obviously is like, okay, I'll give up control, but it seems like I'll use an example of I won't I will not try and keep the person anonymous, but a friend I know is growing this business, and they are doing every single aspect, and it's a media thing, so it's not it there's like video editing and stuff, and they're just doing all of it. And to me, I'm like, there's other people that can video edit. There's other people that can do the outreach. And like, it's just so obvious some things should be delegated. But they're in this mindset. I don't know if it's fear of, and that's where I would say, like, what is the thought process? Because I do agree that it's control, but isn't there also like some aspect of, um, I don't know if anyone else would want to do this for me, or it's almost like you're not giving yourself permission to grow the business bigger. Like if you actually thought when you were a $250,000 painting company that you had the capacity to lead a $4 million painting company, or a five or six or seven, it's like you were I would say a lot of people are missing the belief that they have what it takes to be that big. If they had the belief, they would immediately be like right now, you think differently today. And if everything was taken away and you were dropped out on the street and you had your Buick LeSabre again, it would take you, a couple years to get to where you are now.
there are self-limiting beliefs when you don't know. For a lot of people, some people, I'm more of like a researcher. I like to kind of plot out a couple of different options before I make a decision on it, and a lot of times that's limiting. I think not wanting to just jump in, um, and fall on your face. That could be hold people back. I think the control issue of somebody can't do it as good as I can do it. That's more of an ego thing. I don't know, but that can be limiting. Just not knowing what you don't know is a lot of it too. There's also a lot of hesitation at smaller sizes, especially if you're trying to build a team of managers or even the next level beyond that, a full management team. Is that there's a lot of stuff that we do in growing a business, as starting out as the entrepreneur and then developing it, that you just do it because you do it. You don't know how you do it. You don't know how you got there. Because everything's swimming around all the time. A lot of the limitations could even be as like, hey, I don't even know the first step of training somebody to take this position over. And that's a real concern too, is slowing down enough to write down and start setting up processes and systems so you can repeat that. But even from the beginning, that's a daunting task too. It's like, who's got time? I'm trying to run this company and do sales and get stuff produced and answer the phone and make payroll. Who's got time to sit down and who's got the luxury to sit down with a cup of coffee in front of the fire and write down how I make decisions? And that can hold you back too. But that's also arguably some of the most important things that you can invest your time in.
Have you heard of the book Who Not How?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
haven't read it,
that to
but I've
me is
heard of it. Yeah.
thinking it's well, the principle. I think anyone can. The way I always describe it is that the world and our education system sets you up from first grade of like, here's a problem, figure out how to solve it. Here's a problem, figure out how to solve it. Here's a problem, figure out how to solve it. And so we go into business and we're like, oh, problem, problem, problem. How am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? And then you are just caught in this, problem solving mode. And entrepreneurs are quite good at that. So it feels good. We're solving problems. But the big unlock to really scale is to see the problem and just ask yourself, who do I know that could solve this problem for me, perfectly, much more quickly, efficiently, whatever. Um, and there's a number of aspects of a painting company business that I would think, like, again, this is, this now, but I'm just thinking like the things you just said about teaching someone how to be a manager. You don't even have those resources, but it's like knowing what you know now, I would assume that you probably have a number of coaches that on day one you would have called and said, hey, I need help with X, Y, and Z. Get this training program for me, or like like those types of specialized knowledge things that you quickly identified, I don't know how to do this, but rather than the traditional way, which would be I'm going to take 3 years to figure out how to do it myself, I'm just going to go hire the person that has been doing this for their career and train my team.
Yeah, outsource it, or even when a big problem comes along, is to, you know, you can even tackle it internally, but you're trying to outsource. You're trying to get out of your head like the thought process to train your people. Like I think that's like you said with entrepreneurs, the first thing you want to do is you want to jump on that grenade. I want to. There's a problem. I'm going to tackle it. It's going to get done, and we're going to move on with my day. Whereas catching yourself to slow down and ask people what their thoughts are, and take the time to coach people through a decision making process allows you to get out of the way down the road. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they have a hard time maybe with trusting trusting people to do things or make big decisions in their absence, and in doing that, and slowing yourself down and getting more people involved in, or the right people in your inside your own company involved in helping with the decision making process, they're showing they're every day building that trust that you have for them. They're showing you that they are competent people. You made the right decision in hiring them. They are smart. They can do this. They don't need you. And a lot of times you're just, you just need to get out of their way and let them do it. You want to have the right expectations, because the other side of that is, okay, now I'm going to delegate everything and I'm just going to go fishing every day. And you're leaving your people to you can pendulum too much in one direction. Either you do everything or I do nothing. And either way, I'm a victim of the circumstance, but it's your own fault,
What is the future of Kennedy Painting? What are your goals for the business, for yourself? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think I'm at an interesting point. I just turned 50. My wife's she's a school teacher. She teaches high school, and she's gonna be retiring in 10 years. So yeah, my son is 15. He's driving next week, hopefully, if he doesn't crash the test drive car while the driver's license person's in it. But no, there's some big changes. There's empty nester syndrome is on the horizon, and I've spent the last 25 years, and as business owners, we sacrifice. These things aren't built on. Somebody said a while ago, success starts after 40, and it's not like 40 years old. It's after 40 hours a week. It's that 60th hour you put in is when the real change happens, when you're growing something, right? And at the end of it, my goal right now is to develop a fully functioning management team that can make these big decisions and me get out of their way and let them operate. And I've got the next round of great young. I've got a few people that are in their mid 30s, upper 30s in my company of young managers that are invested in the company and engaged and enthusiastic about it. And I want to make sure that as I start winding my way out, that there's something to turn this over to, whether that's internal buyout, whether that's a management team ownership, something like that. But I'd like it to, I think my job is to steward this thing, help mentor these young people coming up, and steward this thing into the next life cycle without me. So
Have you successfully gotten out of every like aspect of the business other than managing the managers?
no, not really. I'm kind of like the chief utility player. Like if we need sales, I think I'm going to sell maybe 400 this year, which is really not very much. I still do operation management on a more of directing of bigger things. Ultimately the goal is, my job is to do nothing but make sure everything gets done. Right. That's the goal. But I also still enjoy it, and I think that I still enjoy doing sales, and I still enjoy doing some of this. This morning, I teach the leadership class in the company. So we have our junior crew leaders coming up. I teach a 10-week leadership class, and I did that starting at 6:30 this morning. But I enjoy that. I think the goal is to get to a point where maybe I never relinquish everything, but you start doing what you want to do, and you start doing things that have the bigger, greater impact. Um, like I said, I do very well with, I enjoy the process of things, not the result, if that makes sense. I get bored with you. I do good when there's chaos going, or when there's purpose to things.
Hmm. Um, any other thoughts on? We'll move towards the closing questions. Any other like wrap up thoughts, things that you came to this today with? You're like on your mind of like whatever business advice, leadership thoughts, things like that.
Yeah, and you asked me before what I would have told younger Sean, and some of it is like, number one, don't take yourself so seriously. I mean, you got to have fun with it. I mean, we're not. I'm run a painting company. I'm not doing something. I'm not creating. I'm not curing cancer. That there's bigger problems in the world than Mrs. Jones's bathroom not getting a second coat of paint properly. Um, and I think putting things into perspective, I think I would have saved myself and a lot of people that have worked here over the years a lot of stress and headaches had I taken a breather and taken a step back and not put so much pressure on everything all the time. You got to pick your battles. You got to. I don't get my own way in my own company all the time. We vote on certain things, and I respect the vote, and I get out of the way. Um, I think it's better that way. We get when you're an owner and you're if you're too close minded to things, and it can only be your way. If you're the tortured genius, right? That might have been one of those books that you'd mentioned earlier. Is that? But if you're that tortured genius, it's probably you doing the torturing to yourself. It's not anything outside that's affecting your life. There's got to be a quality of life there, and I'm finding that now, which is great. I feel like the development of my management team and the people that I have, the team I've been able to assemble, I'm finding that now, which is great, and it's exciting to see what the next step's going to bring.
Um, what like I have? I just want. This is the phrase that it's one of those weird, like name or word associations where it's like someone says Sean Kennedy, and one of the phrases that is just ingrained in my head from the first time. I don't. Well, it wasn't the first time that we talked, but it was in our discovery process of doing automation work with you guys. But you said that basically you understand that the hardest part for you is writing the check, and then and as long as I can't remember how you phrased it, but it was basically like identifying that it's painful to see money leave the account, but if you know that the end result will, there's going to be some pain as you optimize systems and whatnot. To me, I feel like I guess I'm curious if you could dive into your decision making of like how do you go about large decisions that you're making in the business, because you also brought in your team to help, filter, ask questions and whatnot, but ultimately it comes down to the business owner. What is your strategy when making large investments or decisions that are going to affect the business?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I've learned to socialize these big ideas that a lot of pain and a lot of change is going to come from. I think the point was when I mentioned that is that my biggest pain is writing my signature on a check. I'm not going to be the one implementing it in my own company. I'm not going to be the one doing all the tech work and then completely turning all of my technological systems into upheaval for 6 months, right? There's a lot of pain associated with that. And I've taken I really believe in company culture and, you know, at a certain point, there's decisions that get made and there's greater good, but you also want to make sure you're not just breaking things just for the sake of you're bored with the current status. So I've learned over the years is that if I'm having a crazy idea, there's a couple of people I start socializing that I know it's going to affect. I'll throw it out as like start socializing some of these ideas of like, hey, I just had this crazy idea. What are your thoughts? And then it's almost like it's like a soft pitch of an idea, and then you start getting your feedback, and sometimes if you don't like the answer you take it to somebody else and pitch it a different way, and you work on your message and start trying to get some buy-in around it. Because if you just come in, years ago I'd go to a conference and I'd come back and they'd be like, oh crap, Sean's back from a conference, I wonder what the hell we're going to do now. um, and it freaks people out. People are not used to changing. People don't embrace change like a lot of us do as owners. We embrace change, we embrace chaos, we embrace improvement, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people just want to show up and get a paycheck and go home and kiss their wife and kid and do it again the next day. And so you got to make sure, again, like I think that philosophy of bringing people with you and making sure there's always going to be turbulence, but it isn't crazy up and down. It's not spikes and lulls and spikes and lulls. You want to keep steady progress. People can handle steady progress. The whole putting the lobster in the boiling water thing, right? You put it in, you raise up the well. Maybe they just boil the hell out of those things. I don't remember. Frog in the boiling water. That's the analogy. You heat it up slowly, right? So they don't know they're getting cooked. I think lobsters, you just dunk them in there and you eat them. But
Yeah, that's awesome.
you know the analogy.
So
Raise it slowly over
exactly.
time versus spikes and lulls.
So last couple questions here. 3 book recommendations that you would suggest for the listeners.
So 3 books that I've read over the years. I've read a couple of them. I've read multiple times. First one was Good to Great. I think that's a really good book about best practices of business in terms of you know all aspects of business, the best practices of some of the best businesses. And another book that I read fairly recently, a couple of years ago, we were coming out of a bad couple of years where we were struggling with profits and losing a little bit of money. Profit First, and I don't know who wrote it. It's probably on my counter somewhere. But that's a great book about financial management, a lot of times as owners. And another thing that I would have told myself when I started, set aside a little bit of money for you. You pay yourself first. Don't just take whatever's left over at the end of the month. We typically, you spend with what you have, right? So if you basically a better way of breaking your finances up. So you always have some money and you make better decisions, better fiscal decisions if you strap your accounts a little bit. And then the last book we just read as a production team. So my field supervisors and my ops guy and myself, we read First Break All the Rules. And that's a fantastic book in terms of to what we were talking about before of working with people's strengths instead of trying to fix all their deficiencies. People typically are who they are. They can change things a little bit, but a guy that absolutely hates and is horrible at public speaking is never going to give up and give the State of the Union, right? So you can improve things a certain bit, but you can never fully overcome it. So work with your strengths of your people. And if there's a major deficiency, try to team them up with somebody else that has that other side of the coin, and build teams around that. So
Awesome. I've heard that book, but I've never read it, so I'm adding that to the list here. Um, and last question: what is your favorite movie?
yeah, and I thought about this. I really don't have a favorite movie. I probably do, but I don't watch a lot of movies. But I just recently watched Air. That
Oh,
one I think it
about
was on.
Jordan,
Yeah,
like
yeah, that
Nike
was
and
that was
Jordan.
a really good movie, and especially from a Chicago boy from the Bulls era, it was fun to watch, and I thought it was really well done. It was good acting. It was good. It was enjoyable. So it was a movie that it's weird. My wife likes like crime dramas that I don't want to. I don't know. She likes to see the worst in people of these like First 48 and all these crime dramas. I don't get into that. My son doesn't. So this is a good movie that we could all actually watch together and you know not be offended
One of
by
my
what the other one
favorite
wants to
parts
see.
of that
So
is
Air was a good
talk
one.
about the just the running a business based on like principles, and you have this founder who wrote down these principles, and then I can't remember, is it Ben Affleck or who's the, or maybe it's Matt Damon. I can't
Yeah,
remember
Ben
which one
Affleck.
is Ben Affleck's is Phil Knight, but Matt Damon, the guy who's putting the deal together, he just throws the Phil Knight's like principles in his face. Is like, this is what, I can't remember what his number one thing is, or one of his like 10 principles. He's like, I thought that you did this, and he's just like thinks about it. And he's like, yeah, all right, you got me.
Yeah, that's the power of a team. That's the power of a team is when you have that level of trust there and you can throw when I get my words thrown back in my face and they're right, I got to own it. and that's what makes things that's what when you know you have a good team that is on board with that improvement that you're striving for as a company.
Well, Sean, it's super fun chatting. I appreciate you taking the time to come on today, and I know we'll be working together for many years, and I look forward to it because it's always good picking your brain.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for your attention and listening to this episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. Your feedback and comments mean the world to me. If you liked what you heard, please take a second, leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. If you've got suggestions for future episodes or just want to say hi, shoot me an email at chris@chriskiefer.com. Don't forget, I make it a point to include all the links to the books, movies, and resources mentioned on this episode in the show notes. You can see those directly below in the description or on my website, chriskiefer.com. Thanks so much, guys.